Okay, Irene Watts is the next candidate, and she'll be coming in just a moment.
No, we're only 15 minutes. Good to know.
Hello, Ms. Watts.
Hello.
Thank you for being here tonight. I know you went through this before.
I did, yes.
Yes, and I appreciate your interest in the board. We all appreciate it. So the process is essentially the same.
Right.
You have 15 minutes to complete the questions that we're going to all ask you.
Okay.
And then if there's time remaining, you can make a closing statement. So I'll start. And my question is, why are you interested in serving on the Board of Trustees at this time? Do you have the time and commitment to serve on both the P12 and the HFC boards?
Okay. The interest is many. For one, I am a mom of 2 in the Dearborn Public Schools. So first and foremost, that is the participating in the school board. I have a vested interest, I think, in the community and in terms of the schools to see how my experience could make an impact. And then second, as a teacher, I feel that I have experience in the classroom that would be valuable to the goals of the school board. I've taught for 16 years. I've taught preschool. I have the summer school kids when they have the summers off. So I'm currently transitioning from preschool from my GSRP classroom to the school agers, so 6 to 11-year-olds. I'll have about 20 some of those. So I have experience being in the classroom. I know what it's like to have a child come in and just be exhausted, and knowing that, okay, whatever my plan was for that day is going to be out the window because this child is going to dictate how his needs need to be met. So I wear many hats in the classroom, and one is sometimes a tissue, sometimes a hug, and every day is different. You know, I know that every day I have goals that I need to meet, but in the end, it's all about the child. And I think that knowing how the classroom is organized, knowing how the environment affects a child is important, knowing how my materials are displayed also affects children, and then also knowing that the research behind the curriculum that I use is up to date. I'm always looking for additional PD. There's one coming up for the Reggio Emilia conference in Ann Arbor, and I can't make it quite to Italy to see that in place, how that's used, but the University of Michigan was able to convince them to come to Ann Arbor, so I'll be able to participate in that. So knowing that I'm using what the current and best practices are in my classroom, I think is important, but knowing that there's always more that can be done. There's always more that can be done to reach that child that is currently homeless and is living out of a car and mom's pregnant. And yet knowing that he comes in with a smiling face and he's a great artist, that gives me hope that he will continue to grow into kindergarten and be a great success, because I've seen him have that growth from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. And when you see that kid look at you with his little face and say, "Hi, Miss Irene," and he just give me a big hug, I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here for having those moments when you know you've reached a child that you may have thought, with all the circumstances and stress about being homeless, was maybe unreachable. And seeing that you're there every day, doing your best, but always continuing to be more than just what you were yesterday. So I think that's something that's valuable, knowing that the school board is in charge of a lot of the dictation and the strategic plan, but knowing also that the experience that I've had, what it actually relates to in the classroom. On top of that, I'm also the assistant director, and I've been there for probably 10 years, maybe I've been the assistant director. Time flies. But then also knowing parent-teacher relations, budgeting, how to create the budget, how to meet the budget. When the budget's not reached, what do you do? Making cutbacks, being creative and saying, okay, we need to support our teachers. We don't have the money currently. What can we do instead? What do we need to change, switch around, share, things like that to meet this child's needs? So I think between being a teacher, a parent, an administrator, I think that's what I think is unique coming to the board.
What specific skills or qualifications do you believe that you'd be able to bring to the Board of Trustees?
Growing up, I'm first generation. Over the course of my childhood, I learned through many secretive conversations how my grandparents met. That generation didn't speak much about being in the slave labor camps, but my grandparents met along the fence line of a slave labor camp in World War II. Shortly afterwards, they were placed in the Red Cross camps, were married. 2 years later, they were able to come to the United States with $70 in their pockets to start a life. My grandfather worked for Macy Ferguson, and school was always emphasized. I remember one day I was peeling potatoes, and he corrected me and said, "That's not how you peel potato." And I was thinking, how do you know? I've never seen you in the kitchen. And it was slowly I started getting these pieces because they would never really speak to me about it, but just to one another of their generation. And it was always education. How are you doing in school? What are you going to do? How, you're going to, and my parents were always, you're going to college. My dad worked on the line for Chrysler. He has a closed head injury. He put us all through college. And for him, he finished high school taking night classes. My mom does not have a high school degree. So I came from a family that my mother was not educated. My father was not educated. He had a closed head injury. The probability of us going to college was probably very low, but college was insisted upon. You're going to college. And I remember one day I came home and I had a tough time and I said, "I'm not going back." And my dad cried, and I've never seen him cry, and it broke my heart. And he said, "You're going back." I said, "You're right, I'm going back." So knowing that the upbringing that I had was difficult for the generation before me, more difficult for the generation before my parents, that I have that experience, and I thank my grandparents for enduring and surviving so that I can be here and not take what I've been given with my dad working online, sending us all to college, out of pocket, never took out a loan. And not only teaching my children that, to not take anything for granted, that they're not entitled to anything, but that they have to work hard for that. I think that is something that our community can relate to, and I feel blessed that I grew up in a household where English was not the first language. It was Ukrainian, and I had to go to speech therapy because I couldn't say the S sound, and because in Ukrainian there's 4 S sounds. So I kind of remember feeling the odd man out in school because I went to speech therapy, and then I was forced to go to Ukrainian school on Saturday. As I say forced, now I'm grateful. But then I felt the odd man out because we were no longer speaking Ukrainian at home when my mom really wanted me to. So having that dual language and the culture and trying to remain and keep that culture was also difficult. But I'm thankful for it, and I always speak highly of my heritage and encourage my kids through little words here and there to maintain that at home as well.
How do you see the role and responsibilities of a member of the Board of Trustees?
It's to the kids. It's to the kids. I mean, every day, the responsibility is what's best for the child. It's not what inconveniences me, it's not what's hard on me, it's what is best for the child. And in the end, we have thousands of kids that we're responsible for. In the end, we are the therapist, we are their guidance counselor, we are sometimes when their parent may not be around. Many of them are single-family households. Many of them have the extended household. But in the end, my responsibility is to the children. If I'm not here to make the children my first priority, then I shouldn't be on the board.
How do you envision becoming a productive, contributing member of the existing governance team? 6 current board trustees and the superintendent and college president.
Well, and I think I've kind of spoken about this earlier. I think my contribution to the board could be my experience. I think being in the school, being a GSRP teacher, I have the duality of having a preschool classroom that is state-funded that's combined with a tuition-based classroom. So I've experienced dealing with the Washtenaw Intermediate School District, the advisors that they have sent out, the speech therapist, the occupational therapist, all of the teams that are necessary for that kid's or that child's IEP, perhaps. And then also we also work with the Saline Area School District. So knowing all the different facets of what becomes a team for one child, and then multiply that by thousands. But it's a responsibility that I've seen, I've done, I've initiated, and I participate in throughout the school year for years to come.
Given that both Dearborn Public Schools and Henry Ford College share a common board of trustees, what unique challenges and/or responsibilities do you believe are created by this relationship? And the second part of the question is, how do you see the 2 institutions collaborating on behalf of the students and the community?
You'll have to remind me about the second one. But
I
I
will.
think what's unique about it is that the partnership that can be done. And I know that we have a couple of organizations or colleges that have already been started with the manufacturing. I would like to see an increase with the teachers and the students that are going through the teacher program in early childhood. More and more research is coming out. There aren't enough early childhood teachers out there. We need an increase in GSRP classrooms for the city of Dearborn. We need to reach out to more kids. We need to have half days. We need kids to be prepared to come to kindergarten. And when you don't have the staff that are able to foster that, I think that that's something that we can work with this college and find out how do we get students to go into the program of early childhood or teaching and have them experience what that would look like. Because a lot of the times they come into the classroom, they're not prepared, and they run away within the 5 years. But having them intern with a high scope maybe program, intern at GSRP, have them follow some of the programs that we have at Cotter, because 0 to 5, if they're not ready in kindergarten, if they can't sit still, if they can't problem solve, you're not going to get through it. I mean, you're not going to be able to do ABCs and 1, 2, 3s if this child has an emotional problem. So I think that we need to really try to recruit more teachers or more potential teachers to come into early childhood and or teaching in general. And then what was the second part?
Okay.
Just-
Oops, is this right? I'm sorry.
How do you see the 2 institutions collaborating on behalf of students and the
And I
community?
think, I think I've kind of already
I
touched
think
on
so,
that.
too.
Good. Okay, you have 2 minutes if
Okay.
you'd like to make a closing statement.
I think my closing statement, just to summarize overall, if I were to be on the school board, it's the parent of being a Dearborn student, and now a future student come in September. The teacher, knowing what professional development would look like in the classroom. Many teachers take PD. Most of them may not implement it because they don't have the resources for it. It's great to go and learn about flexible seating. It's great to learn about Reggio, but if you don't have the resources to implement it, you're just spinning your wheels. So you can waste money on PD, but if you're not seeing it in the classroom, why send them? And I think it's also the administration portion that I have, and knowing what that looks like when you're looking at a budget, and knowing maybe you can't do it, but maybe you can't do the flexible seating, but you do donors choose. You ask grandparents, you go to Salvation Army. You'd be surprised what a teacher can use at Salvation Army on a $20 budget. So I think that's what makes me a little bit unique amongst some of these candidates.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest tonight.
you.
Thank you.